Across the Spider-Verse has put multiverses back into the public consciousness. Yes, Rick and Morty and movies like Everything Everywhere All at Once have kept the meme alive. But Across the Spider-Verse has fully reignited multiverse fever, and more importantly, does something more with its multiverse than people seem to acknowledge. Miguel O'Hara, the Spider-Man of 2099 and leader of the Multiversal Spider Society, has this line.
All of our lives woven together in a beautiful web of life and destiny. It's called the arachno-humanoid polymultiverse.
Arachno-humanoid clearly refers to spider people, who all got their powers from radioactive spiders. But what caught my ear was polymultiverse. Poly means many, or in another word, multiverse. So what's above a multiverse? What is the cube to a multiverse's square? The answer exists. It's called an Omniverse. No, not Ben 10 Omniverse, and not Nvidia Omniverse, a collection of connected multiverses. How do I know this? Because the concept and term existed before this movie. While the concept of an omniverse itself has existed in many forms, such as astronomy and physics, I'm focusing on the term omniverse and its relation to fiction. The term omniverse is most commonly attributed to Marvel Comics editor and writer Mark Gruenwald, best known for The Official Handbook of the Marvel Universe and Squadron Supreme. In his fanzine publication, Omniverse, the Journal of Fictional Reality No. 1, Gruenwald defines an omniverse as the continuum of all universes, the space-time matrix that compromises all alternative realms of reality. For in-universe canon, I found Marvel's Universe X No. 2. Here, the Omniverse is displayed as infinite walls of actual comic panels from the past. This implies the Omniverse contains every Marvel comic that has ever been written, regardless of time, canon, or retcons. Everything, in some way, is a canon event. Most recently, this idea has been fleshed out by comic writer and practicing chaos magician Grant Morrison in a series known as Multiversity, featuring a team called Justice Incarnate, which collects superheroes from multiple universes throughout DC's publication history as a team to battle multiversal threats. Not unlike the Spider Society. In Dark Knight's Metal No. 7, the term Omniverse is used, and interviews with Morrison have confirmed that DC now treats its canon as an Omniverse. You may be asking why we even need the term Omniverse if a series of collected universes is already a multiverse. To explain this, we'll look at the OG multiverse story, The Flash of Two Worlds. In this story, Barry Allen, the Flash, vibrates so fast he ends up in another universe. Specifically, the universe of a man named Jay Garrick. Jay Garrick was the first published Flash, but DC eventually decided the character needed a reimagining for the space age and created Barry Allen's Flash. This confirmed that while we may not actively see Jay Garrick in his world, it still exists and is accessible in some way or another. This story created a Venn diagram of the Barry Allen universe and the Jay Garrick universe, thus creating a multiverse. Now to explain how an omniverse is distinct from a multiverse. In 1985, DC Comics saw the amount of alternate universes they had amassed over nearly half a decade, along with acquisitions of other companies' characters, and decided they needed a way to trim the fat and smooth the edges, so to speak. Thus, Crisis on Infinite Earths was launched, a mega event that would see the DC multiverse wiped out and recreated into one universe, where writers could have a fresh start with long-running popular characters that had picked up some extremely strange and contradictory plot points over time. One multiverse ends, another begins. But further down the line, titles like Infinite Crisis and Convergence would pull the old multiverse back into the fray. Now you had two separate canons of multiverses that could interact with each other. Thus, it's more than a multiverse, it's an omniverse. Going back to Across the Spider-Verse, Miguel specifically mentions the MCU's Doctor Strange and Spider-Man.
Don't even get me started on Doctor Strange and the little nerd back on Earth 1999-99.
If you've watched Multiverse of Madness, No Way Home, Loki, etc., you'll know the MCU has its own multiverse, just like the Spider-Verse is its own multiverse. Thus, what we have is a larger Marvel Omniverse at play. Now that's an on-paper conceptual explanation of an Omniverse. But what's really interesting is how an Omniverse functions in terms of storytelling. I've developed a neat hierarchy of separation for multiverses that determines how available each multiverse is to connect into an Omniverse. Keep this in mind, all Omniverses are multiverses, but not all multiverses are Omniverses. At the lowest level is editorial canon Omniverse. What this means is the editors who guide the writers and sometimes the overall direction of a storyline decide what a writer can implement. This is the easiest kind of Omniverse to establish because it's all owned under the same umbrella company of DC Comics and reflects the current understanding of DC canon today. The next level up would be medium-based Omniverses. The Injustice video games have their own established multiverse. But even though it's still part of DC Comics, there's also a larger parent company, Warner, to take into account, which has video game studios separate from what the comic studio does. A comic writer cannot simply rope in the Injustice multiverse into a story they're writing, even if their editor approves of it. That's because there is an entirely different team involved with Injustice. Now, some of you DC fans might point to the Injustice comics, but those aren't actually the same as the video game multiverse. Yes, it follows the same premise and many of the same beats, but the storylines go off in many different directions. Thus, the comics Injustice multiverse is not the same as the game Injustice multiverse. It is more difficult to get multiverses from across different mediums to form omniverses. However, back in Across the Spider-Verse, you'll find the Insomniac game Spider-Man, along with the hilariously low-poly PlayStation 1 Spider-Man, make appearances. Hey, let me make a correction here. After writing the script and doing the whole video, I found out this is not PlayStation 1 game Spider-Man. This is actually the Spectacular Spider-Man from the cartoon series, hence why he looks so jagged and pointy. Back to the video. Here's where the third layer comes into play. This layer is a special layer, called the cross-company layer. Back in the 90s, Marvel Comics nearly went bankrupt after the comic speculator bust, which is an entirely separate story that we don't have time to get into here, and sold the rights to use its characters off to various movie studios. Fox got X-Men, Sony got Spider-Man, and a bunch others. This created movie universes for these characters that were completely separate from not just their comic counterparts, but from Marvel Comics' full control. Those who grew up with the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man might be a little surprised to find that Spider-Man did not shoot organic webbing. The webbing was an invention. So we have the two Sony Spider-Man series with Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, which are separate universes. In Marvel's Spider-Man No Way Home, those Spider-Men all meet in the MCU, which we know is a multiverse from various shows and movies. This means that there is a Sony multiverse that connects to the MCU multiverse to create an Omniverse, which is fully connected in Across the Spider-Verse. Wow, that's a mouthful. To go further than just connected characters, the Marvel vs. Capcom series of video games creates one of the most famous cross-company omniverses, combining various Capcom titles and their universes into the universes of Marvel. Here's where things get a bit tricky. Marvel vs. Capcom has the characters Mega Man and Ryu. These characters have both appeared in Super Smash Bros., another massive cross-company omniverse. Does this mean that the Marvel vs. Capcom universe and Nintendo are all an omniverse? Well, yes, but also no. That's because these cross-company omniverses and cross-medium omniverses are in fact the most unstable and inconsistent omniverses. These kinds of omniverses are highly situational. Often they're created for one or two series, games, movies, etc., and then the multiverses are separated. This is because omniverses and even multiverses on this level have the most powerful defense membrane separating them, a force that, even on our Earth, is feared throughout society. This force is called copyright law. Yes, the thing keeping Superman and Captain America from teaming up and keeps Goku out of Super Smash Bros. Is copyright. A complicated series of legal rules that govern ownership, use, and distributions of ideas, concepts, inventions, and more. While the MCU Spider-Man and Doctor Strange are mentioned in Across the Spider-Verse, they aren't shown, unlike the Maguire and Garfield Spider-Man. This is because Sony owns the latter versions, but not the former. While legal agreements can be made to have crossovers, they are exceptions, not the rule, and do not typically allow either party unlimited use to the characters involved. As such, whether these characters share an omniverse is almost entirely situational and subject to change. Without copyright, you get what's known as the public domain. These are concepts and characters whose creators are long dead, to the point their legal protection has run out. This is most often seen with cultural myths and fairy tales, notably in comic series like Fables and movies like Shrek. While under copyright, legal teams must get involved to contract terms of service, including portrayal of the character, time on screen, and most importantly of all, the shared profit. You might be familiar with MCU's Hulk situation. While Bruce Banner and the Hulk have appeared in numerous MCU films, they haven't had a film to their own. This is because Marvel sold the rights to the character to Universal, who made the controversial Ang Lee's Hulk movie and 2008's The Incredible Hulk. After Disney acquired Marvel, they sought to reclaim the Hulk, but Universal managed to hold on to distribution rights. That means any film with Hulk as the lead needs to cut Universal into their plans and profits. Because of this, Disney's Marvel Studios has yet to make any Hulk-led productions, and maybe never will. So the rules of omniverses and even multiverses can be complicated, but I have great news for anyone currently racking their brains trying to figure out how many leagues of separation the Lego Spider-Man multiverse is from the Street Fighter multiverse. It doesn't matter. While these concepts are fun to think about, they aren't dead set rules, and in 99% of situations, don't matter to whatever story you're looking at. Typically, even multiversal connections are tenuous and rare, which makes omniversal connections practically irrelevant. They rarely affect the larger canon of these characters in significant ways, and often stories are written around these special situations to avoid messy narratives that require consistent cross-company cooperation. While the Maguire, Garfield, and Holland Spider-Man all met up for an omniversal romp, it's doubtful they specifically will impact Spider-Holland moving forward and may not even be mentioned in future storylines at all. But now that the precedent has been set, I could be totally wrong. The point of establishing an omniverse is to invite possibility. The possibility of Superman and Captain America meeting on the big screen. Or Harry Potter could have a duel with Doctor Strange. And I'm betting the possibility of a Tom Holland cameo in the future Beyond the Spider-Verse movie is extremely high due to how popular the current movie series is. CW's The Flash did a similar kind of cameo in their Crisis on Infinite Earths special, where Grant Gustin's Flash used his Speed Force to extend outside the known multiverse and met with Ezra Miller's Flash, the Flash from the current DC Universe movies. It's explicitly stated they've gone outside the multiverse to do this, and the situation is not brought up again, thus not actually affecting the series at all. In the finale of the show Titans, we saw a glimpse into the wider DC Omniverse, including a cameo from Grant Morrison. This is what Omniverses are typically used for. Cameos and Easter eggs for fans, but sometimes can be used for more. In No Way Home, Garfield's Spider-Man got a chance to save MJ, where previously he failed to save Gwen Stacy. This allowed an unfinished character art to wrap up with some catharsis, and is a prime example of how Omniverses can be used moving forward. As a comic book reader who has suffered through multiple Universal reboots and canon retcons, I can tell you the most important thing is to just enjoy the story you're reading. Try not to get too bogged down making a strict connective map of every created Batman universe and their canon connections. Just appreciate the story being written. Thanks for sticking around this long, and if you like this video, leave a like, subscribe, and more, and leave a comment on your Omniverse-sized big brain ideas, and I will see you next time.